Welcome back to the Hot Desk. Now, there was a big development for Waterford Port this week with the announcement that a Dutch shipping line is to offer a new route from the port beginning next month. And to explain the implications and to have a chat about Waterford Port more generally, I'm delighted to have in studio with me now the Port's Terminal Operations Manager, Derek Madigan, and Chief Executive, Frank Ronan. Thanks so much for coming in, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Tell me, I'll start with yourself, Derek, first of all, to explain what this new development is.
Yeah, it's quite an exciting development, Julie. It means we've now got what's called a feeder deep sea service operating out of Waterford. We've never had anything like that before out of Waterford Port. We were strictly a short sea container service port. So it's a new departure. It's been asked for by a lot of the importers and exporters in the region for a number of years. It's took a long time to bring to fruition, but happily now it looks as if it'll be starting sometime in July.
So this is a big deal. So this means that you can now, or a company based in Ireland, can reach further flung destinations, essentially.
Yes, whereas
directly.
before they would have had to operate through Dublin or Port of Cork to get their boxes to the non-European destinations, I would call them, the likes of Africa, Far East, America, South America. So now these boxes can actually be delivered into Port of Waterford, put on a vessel there, on a BG vessel, sent across to Rotterdam, and then put on the mother vessel to go to whatever part of the globe they need to go to.
Okay, so you're saying this is something that had been sought for a long time. Does it take a long time to try and generate these link-ups?
Yes, it took a long, long time, particularly the way the world economy was when back in 2013 when we started this trying to put this in place. Shipping lines and shipping companies are very conservative. They don't like to change, and trying to convince them that there was enough containers and volume in the Waterford region, southeast region, to do this was quite a task and took quite a long time, a lot of convincing as well. And
when you say it took a lot of convincing for them, I mean, who are your main customers?
Well, they're primarily all the agri sector exporters, so they're easily known. The Clan B is Dawn Meats, Dawn Pork and Bacon, Nutricia in Wexford. People like that are the prime sources of the volumes that are going to start this service. We hope to grow it then as we go on, as people become confident with it. So there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies we would like to bring on board as we go ahead.
Great. So this is potentially the start of something big for the port, Frank. And of course, it's an important time for the port too, isn't it? I know you're beginning to develop your master plan as well for the next 25 years.
Yeah, and the master plan tries to get the crystal ball out of the press and see where we're going to be in 25 years' time, and that's always a challenge. But for a master plan to have any meaning at all, it's all about servicing a business, servicing a market. On the Port of Waterford, I suppose there's a couple of legs on the stool, and to see that kind of that extra leg of the low kicking in with the BG service and with Maersk gives a great foundation for that master plan, a great confidence, I suppose, to see where we're going next. So yeah, it's a good start. I think there's more we can do on that front. The master plan will try and gauge the sort of infrastructure we're going to need. Infrastructure in ports takes a long time to develop. Consenting is difficult. The money is difficult. I mean, there's big investments required. So to get all that lined up, we need a master plan. We need a vision. We need a view of where we're going. It's a bit a la carte, Julie. We won't go building anything until we find we need it. So it's about preparing, about getting ready, about having a list of options that we can, I suppose, take off the shelf and put in place if and when we need them. So it's very much about if first, and then get them lined up.
And what about Brexit? Is that something that you would see a benefit for or benefit from? And particularly maybe now that you have this link to Rotterdam, could that be a way indirectly you could?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Funny, but the Rotterdam thing is actually it's more about the climate change debate than it is about Brexit. You know, that development for us. And it's great to see the Cabinet signing off this morning on his climate change, plan, because what the BG service that we're announcing today does first and foremost is it takes trucks off the road, or it certainly takes those journeys off the road and allows people in this area to go straight to ships with much less road miles. So that's a really good climate story. The traffic we're looking at here would never have gone through the UK, so it's not impacted by that whole You've heard about the land bridge and the customs and the queues in Dover. None of that stuff is relevant for this particular service. This service would have always gone directly from Dublin to Rotterdam or directly from Cork to Rotterdam or some of the big European hubs. So there's no real change in that, and there's no impact in the UK doesn't have an impact. But don't underestimate the concerns we all have about Brexit. The Brexit, if it goes all horribly wrong, which it keeps threatening to do, the impact is just economy wide, and very heavy on the food sector and the agri sector. So that remains a concern. Yeah. Quite apart from the logistics issue, there's a real deep economic concern there.
Yeah, and speaking of economic impacts, of course, Waterford Port has a huge impact on the region there in Waterford and the southeast region more widely. We saw that in an economic impact study that came out on the port last year.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's a good conversation over a coffee. It's what we're really about. I think the impact of the port, that wider economic impact, that's really what we're about. So it's, I mean, I know we disclose our accounts and what we do in here and there, but that's very narrow. Our reason to be in life is to facilitate trade in the region. So we're very southeast orientated, and it is about moving traffic through and making things happen in the economy and make it happen more efficiently and more effectively. So the fact that we can actually encourage jobs growth, encourage business growth, take cost out of supply chains, allow things to happen in our area with greater ease is really what we're about. And to do that, we have to run a business, make a profit, invest, have master plans, all that stuff. But it's really, it's all to one side. It's really about it's facilitating the economy. That's what we think about.
Okay. And Derek, that's with the broad picture stuff and looking to the future. On an operational level, day to day, what are some of the challenges and the things that you're dealing with?
Well, at the moment, the challenges are trying to get in as many low-load services, container services as we can. We would like our current partners, DFDS and Samskip, arrive in Dublin, come to Waterford and then go back on to Cork. We would like at some stage to get a line going straight from Waterford to the continent, which is something we've done back in the early 2000s fairly successfully. So as the economy is starting to come back and confidence is starting to grow in the operations we can do and what we can and cannot do in Waterford, that we'd hope to attract maybe another line that can do something like that. So that's our next challenge after bedding in Maersk and BG.
Explain as well just the difference between low and roll-on, roll-off, because that's something that we don't do in Waterford. It's just the low-low, isn't that right?
Yeah, we just do low-low in Waterford. And what low-low is, it's lift-on, lift-off. It's basically lifting the container off it, whether it's a truck or a train, putting it. You can put it directly on the ship or you can put it into the compound till the ship arrives. And the Ro-Ro, it's a little bit slower than Ro-Ro. Ro-Ro is obviously your roll-on, roll-off, where either the truck or the trailer unit is put on the ship and pulled off on the other side again. So two different concepts. One, Ro-Ro is a bit faster. That's when you hear about Brexit with Ro-Ro and land bridge and stuff like that. But the short sea and feeder services are normally low. So lift on, lift off. And it's quite a simple concept. A bit slower, but probably more economic or environmentally friendly.
Okay. And are you happy enough with that, or is it something that you'd like to develop the Ro-Ro as well, maybe into the future?
At this moment in time, we don't see Waterford as being an option for Ro-Ro, the way the river is and the type of vessels that are now operating in the Ro-Ro sector. We would see Rosslare as a partner of ours, and that they're subsidised by the state or they're operated by the state, as are we. So why have two assets doing not functioning completely?
Yeah. And would you see greater maybe integration or cooperation then in the future between yourselves and Rosslare, particularly as the road improves?
Yeah, well, we in the last 2 years with Frank and their chief executive have started to cooperate quite a lot on things like marketing the southeast and things like that. So there's a small bit of a relationship there, and it may grow over the years. Who knows what will happen?
They're important to us in lots of ways. I mean, certainly we're working away trying to get the freight trains back into Waterford, and those are the men that are really important to us in that. And don't forget, Julie, that Waterford is not. I mean, the low. It's great to see a good story there, but we've had a good story for a number of years now on the bulk side of our business. So Waterford is a bulk port and a low port. Rosslare is a few miles over the road, owned by the same government, owned by the same taxpayer, doing a very good job on Ro-Ro. They've had a couple of things that changed, I suppose, in recently in diversion of traffic to Dublin, but done a good job on Ro-Ro and passengers. So we see both ports as being partners in the southeast and complementary rather than in opposition or rather than competing. And that's a mindset that I think is important, and we always try to say that. I think it's important to understand that, and that's certainly where we come from on it.
Now, Waterford and Rosslare as well, of course, are Tier 2 ports. Dublin and Cork would be Tier 1. Does that make much of a difference when it comes to getting government investment? Are you satisfied with the amount of support that you get?
It's the answer to that, of course, Julie, is no.
No. Who's ever satisfied with the amount
and it's even worse than that, because you mentioned government. When you just peel back the first layer of that, none of the ports, no matter what tier you are, will actually get any direct government aid. So state aid is a no-no for us. If we want help, we need to go to the CEF funding, the big transport budgets in Europe. It's probably easier to get, if you're a Tier 1 port, to get direct funding out of Europe. But even direct grant funding is very scarce. What happens, you get what they call these blended things, basically. You end up getting good loans from the EIB, but it's still all repay with money, whereas I have to admit, with these big capital budgets and big capital plans that we've got to put in place in ports, but relatively low-earning businesses, grant aid can be very, very important. So Tier 1 makes it a bit easier to get the grant and the supports. Tier 2, we have to work a wee bit harder. And for instance, we're heading off next Friday to go over and see the Motorways of the Sea guys, which is a branch of the European funding. Ourselves and Rosslare will probably travel together. And we will be looking with other stakeholders to see if we can put together whatever sort of, I suppose, joined up thinking we need to do to secure funding for all of us. So it's not impossible, just a little bit more difficult, a bit more tricky.
More tricky.
Yeah.
And talk to me then as well about cruise ships, because when we've seen Dublin Port are trying to restrict now, they're so busy they don't want the cruise ships. In Waterford, we've seen a relatively steady level throughout the last few years. Is that important, or is it? It's
important, and we work away at a certain level. We have to put the hand up first. Dublin took some ferocious hits there about that, but we kind of understand that you're in the business to facilitate trade, and sometimes you got to make choices. You can't be all things to all people. We bring cruise ships to the southeast. It's important in the wider economy again in what we do. So it supports a lot of hospitality business, a lot of tourism related business in the southeast. We think we could do more. The offering we have for the very big ships, we bring them to Dunmore, and we tender the passengers in. For middle-sized ships, we'll take them to Bellevue. But even there, it's becoming conflicted insofar as if we have 3 bulk ships and a cruise ship, they're not compatible, Julia. So you're trying to sort out ways to do that. And some of the smaller ships we still like, and in the long term, we'd hope to bring them up into the city. Yeah. We think there's a facility there at the Great Island maybe we could make more use of. So I think it's a game about playing to our strengths, about looking what we have, about maximising the facilities we have, and trying to find the niches that suit us best. But again, we can't be all things to all people. Finally then, Derek, as this service now expands, it's July, is it, that we'll see the first...
Yeah, first week in July. We hope the first week in July, and it'll all start then. That's the plan at the moment. So everything going, IT systems for the shippers and stuff like that, their SAP systems have to fit in with the shipping lines. So that's been a small blocker, but we're just over that. So we hope to get going around the 6th of July. Okay. And will that require then more staff? Are you recruiting at the moment? Yes, we're looking at recruiting staff. So it's on our website. We're looking for some crane drivers and some terminal operations staff. And we're also succession planning because our workforce is starting to age. So we're looking to do some succession planning as well. So that'll, over the next number of months, we'll probably form a panel and start to bring in guys and train them. And what about employment numbers? Have they fluctuated a lot over the years? I mean, I suppose when Bell Lyons went in 97, was it? 97, yeah. There would have been a big scale back. Would you say you're kind of up to where you were? Well, from that Bell Lyons was an entity in itself. That would have implied almost 50 people, whereas the port would have had lower numbers. So after the Bell Lyons, I suppose numbers were quite good until the economic crash in 2008. So I would say we kind of halved our workforce between 2008 and 2011. But that's slowly coming back, and I'd say we've employed maybe a dozen people in the last 2 years, and those numbers are growing all the time. So, and it must be remembered, for every one we're employing, I'd say we're probably indirectly maybe 4 to 6 more. So that's kind of where it builds. We're not huge employers, what we do bring scalability into it when we employ a person. There's indirect jobs there as well, you know.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, look, it was great to hear all about the positivity that's coming from the port and the growth, and we wish you well with all of it. And Derek Madigan and Frank Ronan, thanks so much for taking the time to come in to me today.
Thank you very much. Julie.